Next part of the question requires us to add the second clip. So I'm going back to my project pin and look for our more tool. Click and drag it to the end of where our caption ends. And we are supposed to add an appropriate transition as it changes to the next clip. So we can do this using preset effects that are already in Premiere Pro, or we can do this manually. Okay, so for the sake of time, we are just going to pick one of the presets that are already inbuilt in Premiere Pro. So to do that, we go to Effects and look for Video Transitions down here. Drop it down, and you can either choose from 3D Motion or from Dissolve. I'm going to pick from 3D Motion. I'm going to pick the cube spin, drag it and drop it just in between the caption. Now when you drag and drop your effects on the clip, let me extend it so that you see. This is your clip. You realize that it falls on only one side of the clip, whereas we want it to fall in between. So how do you solve this problem? You select the effect, you click on it once and go to your effect controls. And over here we have something we call alignment. So we drop down the menu and select center at cut. Instantly you see now your effect will end and begin with both clips in between. So if I play this portion back, you see it spins into the new video. Now let's ensure that the animation lasts for 2 seconds. So we can double click on it and change the 1 second default that is in here. We set transition duration to 2. Then we click OK. So it expands it a little more. And so we have our cube spin. Now let me reduce it and then let's have a look at what happens. Exactly. So as we move from one clip to the other, we realize that the text sort of still remains during the transition. So let's quickly fix that. So to get that done, we can quickly create a nested clip. And to do that, we hold down Shift whilst we select the text and the caption. We right click and we see nest. You can rename it caption underscore text. You can give it any name. Click OK. But what it does is the transition goes away, so we quickly need to add it again. So as we did, we go to our effects, drag and drop it. Ignore this message, just click OK. And so now this time around, when we drag or when we play back, our text moves away with the entire video. Now this video, according to the question, is required to last for 7 seconds. Now if I place my playhead on exactly where it's supposed to begin, it's 27. So plus 7, that'll give us 34. So in the timer, I enter my 34 seconds. Let me expand this. And this is where it's supposed to end. So I pick my razor tool and make a quick cut. Then select the end and then off it goes. And next, we need to select the last frame. This is the last thing that appears. The last frame because the question says we should select an appropriate background for credit. So I prefer to use the last frame for that and take a snapshot. But let's be sure. Let's go back to the question. It says place the video clip, okay, which we have done. Use 2-second transition, which we have done. Next, select an appropriate background and transition for your credits, for the credits. Place this at the end of the video and display it for the next 7 seconds. Okay, add appropriate credits to match the brief, include your name. Then let's go back to the brief. So we have the original clips were filmed on 31st by GBR Video and then location. So we have a date, we have the company that did it, we have a location. And then you're supposed to add your candidate number. That wasn't stated here, but I think that's what we need to add. So let's quickly go back into Premiere Pro and get this section done, after which we need to go to open our Opera file and remove the end clip so that only 43 seconds remain. So we edit this file so that it has an appropriate fade in and fade out. And we save the audio clip in MP3 format with the file name Opera 2. Okay. So the last clip is what I prefer to pick. I'll pick a picture of it. So if you can't see the camera again, it means you need to do some dragging just to extend that portion so that it appears. And then we can name this frame credits. Go back into your project bin and then pick the credit background, drag it, drop it in here. And drag it and drop it at the end of the clip. And it's supposed to last for 7 seconds again, so 34 plus 7. I think that's around 41. So I drag my handle of the credit background to the 41-second mark. And then so I can now add my text. So as usual, I pick my T, I type 2, and then I start typing. I begin with filmed by GBR. Next line, add a location. And let's elaborate further on that by adding country. And the date it was filmed. And then the candidate's name. I'm just going to type in this, and then now I'm going to make sure it's centered. Drag it back here. And now let's go back down to our timeline. Extend it a bit. And then this is our type. Make sure it begins with the background that you created. And it should end with it as well. Make sure it ends with this. So drag the handle to the end as well. So we have the text appearing for the entire duration. So this is your credit. Now select the clip once again. And then look at the graphics panel on your right. You see roll. Make sure roll is selected. So when we play this back, we have it rolling upwards. Like actual credits in the movie. Okay, so we need to create our first evidence. That is evidence 1. It says we should export your video in MP4 format with the file name elmao_1_ followed by your center number and your candidate number. So let me quickly do that. But before you do that now, make sure your timeline is selected. To ensure that you always see this blue line, this thin blue line going around your timeline. If you select any of these panels and you try to export, it won't work. So once again, select this timeline, go to File, then we go to Export, and then we select Media. In the Media panel, you have the option to select the format, the preset, and then the output name. These are the 3 most important things, or the 2 most important things you have to take note of. So it says we should first export it in an MP4. An MP4 in Premiere Pro is also known as the H.264. And then we come to the output name, which should bear, you select the tutorial folder, and then name it just as required, elmo_1_ candidate number and center number and candidate number. Underscore using, let me use 9999, just a random number, and then I save. Okay, so we have this here. Next, we export. Click on the export button once, and it exports the file for you. Okay, great. So as we are done exporting, next we go into our project bin or project, and then look for the Opera file, which is the audio file. This. So let me double click on it. Yeah, when you double click on it, you see up here, you see that in the source panel, the audio clip is here. So now we are required to fade in and fade out as we add it, but first we need to ensure that only 43 seconds of the clip remains. So how do we do that? The clip is, for this one, I think it's 4 minutes long. Now let's drag it and drop it in our timeline and see. Yeah, it's long. It's actually longer than the entire. So what we need to do is go into our timer, change the seconds to 43, enter. So this is our audio clip down here with the wavy stuff, and then pick your razor to clip it. And then remove the end. That's what the question says. So now we need to edit this so that it has appropriate fade in and fade out. Fade in means from 0 volume to normal volume, and then fade out back to 0. So we go to our effect controls, make sure the audio clip is selected, and then we look for audio, then we look for level. Now bring the playhead to the beginning of your entire work, because that's where the audio should also start from. And make sure the stopwatch is selected, and change the 0.0 decibels here to -40. Now it creates a keyframe in which if you play it back, you can barely hear the music. You can't hear it again. Now bring the playhead back to where we began. We're going to move some frames forward, or some few seconds forward, to create the effect. So I prefer 2 seconds. 2 seconds forward. Playhead here has also moved 2 seconds forward, and I changed the decibel level to 0. So when I play this back, it doesn't, I think the 2 seconds is too short. So what we can do is select the last keyframe, drag it in further, and let's play back again. So it gradually comes to normal. Okay, so we get into the end of the clip, or the end of the audio. And then once again, let's see how many seconds more. We have like 43, so let's let the fade out begin at like 30, 39. That's at your own discretion, but as the question said at the beginning, it should be of professional standards. So I think 38 is okay. Or 39. Okay, 39. Then once again, instead of just entering 0 again, you see you have this handle here. It means you want to add a keyframe. So it's still at 0. Now move to the end of the audio, and once again, -40. So let's drag our playhead back to say 37 and play back how it's going to sound. Yeah, so it fades out. So we are done with the fade in and fade out. And we are supposed to save this as evidence 2 in an MP3 format. So in this case, all we need is the audio. In other situations, you will need to open another audio software to get it done, but in Premiere Pro, we can get all done at a go. So on the left side of the timeline, we have these toggle view and mute. And for the actual video that we did, we might not need it in this MP3. So there's nothing that you can do about that, but we don't need it actually. All we need is this. But the actual video also has some audio, so we need to mute that. So this M represents mute. Select mute. And so this time around, the rocket sound, you won't hear it. So all you hear is the audio. So once again, select the timeline. Make sure this blue line appears around everything. Go to File, Export, Media. This time, out of the format, we select MP3. And then change the name as required in the question. It's opera underscore 2 underscore your candidate number underscore your center number and candidate number. Then you say save, and then we go ahead and export. Done. So fast. Next, we need to add a soundtrack to your video so that they start and finish at the same time. We have already done the adding here. So once again, we unmute what we muted before the export, and it requires us to ensure that the audio begins and ends at the same time. So to do that, we just right click on the audio and select speed and duration. And what we actually want is 41 because the video ended at 41. So we change the duration here, let the speed remain at 100. Premiere Pro will do the calculation by itself, and then you just click OK. So now when you do that, you see that the clip and the video end at the same time. Okay, so it doesn't have effect on the fade out, so we are good to go. And so the entire file we also need to export. So you select the timeline again, go to File, Export Media. Once again, this time around it requires us to save evidence 3 in WMV format, which is Windows Media Video. So you drop down and select Windows Media Video here, and then select your output name, and this is also going to be called evidence. It's going to be called LMAO underscore 2 underscore PH, that's my center number, then my candidate number. Then go to save and then export. And the last evidence we need to provide is the same file but in AVI format. So once again, select timeline, export media. This time we select AVI. Once again, the output name, change it to LMAO. I can select any of these. Change it to 3, and then take off this extension at the end, and then just say save. And then we export. Okay, so we are done with that. We can go into our folder now and check if we have everything that is required. Okay, so we began with 1, which is an MP4. We have 2. Then we did Opera. Opera is here. And then we have 3, which is also there. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you have any questions and suggestions, you can place them in the comment section of this video. And to all the A-level candidates who are writing next week, I wish them A stars in all their subjects. Until we meet in the next tutorial, it's bye.